By early 2016, Cleveland, Ohio was the only major American city with three major sports franchises that hadn't won a championship in over half a century. Its plight and its fandom even inspired a sports documentary, Believe Land, which, in a curious turn of fate, aired only a month before the Cleveland Cavaliers came from behind to win the NBA championship. A major part of that win? A player originally from Akron who had appeared on the cover of Sports Illustrated while he was still in high school, LeBron James. James' storied early career is the backdrop to Rajiv Joseph's two-actor play, King James. Whether you're a fan of basketball or not, Joseph's play will have you believing in friendship, in nuance, and, to paraphrase the director of its first production, in what America could be. Welcome to Ford Theater's Sweet 16 season. I'm your host, Marcella Kearns, and I'd like to introduce you today to King James, give you a guide, look at the production, the process, the production team, and more. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you at the theater. First, a little bit about the play and its production history. King James is still a very young play. Our production is its Wisconsin premiere. The play premiered at Steppenwolf in March 2022 and moved to Center Theater Group's Mark Taper Forum in LA for a run that June. The play was co-commissioned and co-produced by both theaters. It's now making the rounds around the country with recent productions at the Manhattan Theater Club, the Old Globe, and Rec Room Arts. And yes, next year it will be produced at the Cleveland Playhouse in the city in which the story of the play takes place, in partnership with the City Theater of Pittsburgh. I have a feeling that run will be well attended. Originally meant to open in May 2020, the pandemic sent the play into a hiatus. Within that time, it underwent some changes. So there was a new director who came aboard, Tony winner Kenny Leon, and there was an overhaul of the script. To Mr. Joseph, the opportunity to rewrite was actually a silver lining. To me, he said, it's great to put down a script for a long period of time and then come back to it. This was in an article in the LA Times. I do that, he said, even without pandemics. There's actually this opportunistic place where you can engage with it as a stranger. It's a nice place to be if you can afford it. And with King James, I had a longer than usual time to do that. That first artistic team, as is often the case with world premieres, also had a hand in massaging the world premiere production, or the version of that script. Glenn Davis, who originated the role of Sean and for whom that role was written, actually, shared in the New York Times that the first draft and early versions of the script contained a lot more actual basketball within them. Joseph pared it down to more finely tune the script towards the evolving friendship between the two young men in the play. Chris Perfetti, who originated the role of Matt, if you are a fan of Abbott Elementary, you will have seen him on that show, was helpful as he was a basketball outsider, and he found a lot of those spots in rehearsal. So with Joseph in the room, the director and the actors had the benefit of being able to ask the playwright about intent with lines and moments. Perfetti's basketball questions helped Joseph find what was key and what could be trimmed. We now get the benefit of that as well as a theater that is producing the piece post those first round fixes, we might say. About to Rajiv Joseph himself. He actually grew up in Cleveland, so in many ways, this play is a love letter to his own fandom and his city. This play, he said, is a sort of alchemy of stories I've heard, conversations I've had with people, and the general sense of being a young person in Cleveland Heights and those heightened emotions that come out when you start arguing about sports. He grew up in the 80s and 90s, he shared in the Times, in a family of Cleveland fans. They cheered the Browns, football, the Indians, baseball, and of course, the Cavs, the basketball team. Their moods fluctuated according to how their beloved teams were doing. When he began to write the play in 2017, a year after the Cavs championship win, he found himself considering how sports often became the medium for people, especially young men, to be able to connect. At least in the sort of heteronormative world in which I grew up, he said of that upbringing, it was a struggle for young American men to communicate emotion. Sometimes a love of the game is the only way people who have difficulty expressing their feelings are able to articulate them. In college, Joseph declared a creative writing major in order to take a creative writing class. He hadn't yet declared his major and didn't anticipate that it would become his life. That was actually what caught him. Out of college, he spent 3 years in the Peace Corps in Senegal, and he attributes that time to really building his writing practice. He created a daily discipline of writing as he was an isolated English speaker. And so that habit he carried with him actually when he came back to the States and went to graduate school. He actually went with intent to become a screenwriter. He didn't anticipate veering into playwriting. At NYU, though, he had to take a playwriting class. But he says he also got to see a lot of plays, contemporary plays, really for the first time in his life. He had seen classical works, but this was a place where there was a hub of new work, and really that set his trajectory. His play, Bengal Tiger at the Baghdad Zoo, was a 2010 Pulitzer Prize finalist for drama and was also awarded a grant for Outstanding New American Play by the National Endowment for the Arts. Rajiv Joseph has twice won the Obie Award for Best New American Play for Guards at the Taj and Describe the Night. He's also an ensemble member at Steppenwolf. During the pandemic, he staffed or worked as part of the writing team on, in the jargon of that industry, 4 different television shows. He was also on the writing team for seasons 3 and 4 of Nurse Jackie. But he says writing for television isn't anything like writing for the stage, where it's his vision that can serve as the scaffold for a production team. There's something really magical to me, he says, about the limitations of the stage, of creating a story that's going to be on a stage with no special effects really to speak of, besides the special effects that can be created by a theatrical lighting design and sound design, a set design. It's so analog. It's live entertainment. There's something about that, he says, that I really love. I'd like to move on to talk a little bit about how this play came to forward. So Jenna Puffgray, our artistic director, had plenty to say about that. I'd like to share that in a minute. But first, when we were building our 2025 season last fall, most of the plays we were enthusiastic about, I'd like to share, to produce this year had something in common. They were two-handers or two-actor plays. As we studied them with our advisory company and weighed that commonality alongside our larger cast world premiere coming up, Murder Girl, we found that they leaned really heavily and overtly into family and chosen family or friends. As Jen frames it, all of the plays look at the vulnerability and risk involved in connecting with another human, how daunting it can be, and how necessary and how rewarding. As she continued, post-pandemic, and I can certainly speak to this myself personally, we're all still processing our lockdown and isolation and how our relationships have changed and how we develop relationships have changed. We're still figuring out how to build new friendships. There's a lot of desire, and there's at the same time a lot of apprehension in connecting. All of the plays get at that, she says. So the beauty of connection, but it's not in your face. So in selecting our season, we really decided to lean into and explore the intimate one-on-one connection. And with King James, we're starting our season with a game of one-on-one. King James was actually the second play we planned for our season. Jen had her eyes on it from the point that it debuted at Steppenwolf in 2022. She was intrigued by the play and, in her words, is always surprised at how few plays are set in the sports world. So she thought it would resonate with our audience, nevertheless, but also I know we have a lot of sports fans out there, so it couldn't go wrong. And she ended up applying for the rights as soon as the advisory company approved. The advisory company themselves are made up of a really disparate mix of sports fans and those who are not sports fans. So the fact that it appealed to so many was really a telling sign. Side note, if you're curious about other sports-themed plays, you can check out the latest episode of our podcast, Theater Forward, where we dig into some more very well-known ones. Among them, Take Me Out, which is about baseball. But I shouldn't spoil it. I'll let you get to it yourself. Let me turn now to some thoughts from our director, Michael Burke. First rehearsal now affords the opportunity for the director and the design team to share their ideas about what they'd like to explore and how they're going to build the world that you'll see in real time with a broader group. At first rehearsal for King James, our director mused, "This play itself is much like the sport that they follow. We are watching these two human beings as they grow up together over a few years and their friendship unfold in a one-on-one game in life." Michael shared that there's a quote by LeBron that he finds really fascinating about how committed one can be to being really just present in someone else's life. LeBron said, "There's that moment every morning when you look in the mirror. Are you committed or are you not?" Michael said, "You see that in action between these two men. There are moments when they really actually have to look deeply at each other and they have to stay committed. It's really easy to be a fan of a sport or of a person from afar, but the closer you get, the longer you know them, the more you learn that the people you like aren't just made up of the things you love, but they're also made up of the things that you dislike. So the question becomes this: can you still be someone's biggest fan when you learn, in fact, that they're complicated, just like you are? Are you committed to this friendship? What does that mean?" It's such a lovely meditation, he said, on the love and the work of friendship. A little text and context now on the play. For a deeper reflection on the play and its themes, I'd love to refer you to advisory company member Mike Fisher's essay in our program. For today, however, I'd like to fill you in on a few behind-the-scenes stories connected to the script and our production. It's my pleasure, first of all, to introduce to you, though you won't see him out on stage, you might see him somewhere in the theater sometime, our assistant director, Ali Mansouri. We've had the gift of welcoming him into our production process here. He's a PhD student in interdisciplinary theater studies at UW. He also holds a Master of Fine Arts in Directing from the Art University of Tehran. He is no stranger to the works of Rajiv Joseph. Ali translated Joseph's gruesome playground injuries into Persian and directed it while he was in grad school. That production, as he shared, was on stage twice in Iran, one for 15 nights at Tehran City Theater in 2015, and again in 2017 at Mergan Playhouse for 60 nights. He also translated Joseph's Guards at the Taj, which Melody Aramnia staged at Iran Shah's Playhouse in 2017. Ali's perspective on Joseph's work follows. So here's what Ali said, just quote, "Several characteristics make Rajiv Joseph's plays to be universally liked. Joseph possesses an amazing talent for transforming complex and serious human issues into delightful stories with relatable characters, regardless of their origin or time period. Also, he is adept at creating humorous moments in ordinary situations and even painful experiences. As assistant director, Ali's had the chance to compare directing approaches. Being in the room, he said, is a beautiful experience. I have the chance to see the creation process closely and learn about the differences and similarities in every stage of rehearsal. I must say, I'm pretty impressed by everyone's efforts to bring even the tiniest details of life onto the stage, whether it's about the mixed emotions of the characters during an argument or the size and color of a money well. One of my favorite moments during rehearsals, he said, is when I see Mikael murmuring to himself, and then a new idea is born. As he shares it, though, the bonding among the team, the fun was not confined to the rehearsal room. We actually had the opportunity to send the team to see a Badgers game. And in his words, he says, "We went to Camp Randall Stadium. I was so excited that even before learning the rules of the game, I acted like a true fan, jumping, shouting, cheering." I have a feeling the Badgers probably really were very happy about having a new fan in the mix that day. A bit now about basketball itself. One of the attendees I would like to share of our invited dress rehearsal remarked, I don't know anything about basketball, but I sure laughed a lot. That sentiment, as I mentioned before, seems to be really in part what Rajiv Joseph was going for. The play is about how two young men bond over their shared love of a sport, but audiences don't need to be lovers of the sport to dig into the meat of the script. That said, here are just a few bits about the sport and its place in American culture to steep you in the world of fandom you'll encounter. First, basketball is really second only to football in its popularity as a sport in the United States. And in the professional arenas, it is third only to football and baseball in terms of its revenue. So it's a moneymaker. We can see that by virtue of the fandom. Two, James Naismith, a PE teacher and coach originally from Canada, invented the sport in the late 1800s, I think 1891. He wrote the rule book, and he lived long enough to see the sport enter the Olympics, not only as a demonstration sport, but as a competitive sport. And how did it all start? With a soccer ball and a few peach baskets. 3, there is an undying fan battle over who is the greatest basketball player of all time, Michael Jordan or, yes, LeBron James. Please do not engage in a battle with a fan who falls on one side or the other. There is no winning. 4, how to score. So the goal is to shoot the ball through a hoop on your opposing team's side. You may have seen this even if you're not a big fan of the sport. It is omnipresent, so you can probably pick that up pretty quickly if you haven't already. Once you do shoot the ball through the hoop, the opposing team then takes possession of the ball to try to score on you. Defending players players while they're on the defensive will block shots, steal the ball, deflect passes, and pick up the ball from missed shots. 5, as you may have picked up, or if you didn't know, each game is divided into 4 periods, clocked at 12 minutes each. More to come on that 4-period stretch in just a moment. Generally, you'll see 5 players from each team on the court. They may play one of 5 positions. LeBron James has spent his career as one of the positions called forward, which has not gone unnoticed by the staff of this theater company. Next, in order to move the ball, a player must dribble or bounce the ball on the floor continuously or pass. They can't do, among other things, what's called walking or traveling, which is to hang on to the ball for more than 2 steps after beginning to dribble. I want to share this specific because it will show up in the play. Now, whether you're a neophyte to the sport or not, watch in the play how the characters keep their own rhythms going, whether they are in their own active gameplay or whether they're in a different kind of one-on-one. Finally, have we mentioned not to try to win an argument over whether it's LeBron or Michael Jordan? Yeah, there's no winning that one. I'd like to turn our attention at this point to our production team, our design and production team. One of the major tasks of the design team for King James was to set up the passage of time. 4 different years will appear in 4 different scenes or quarters, reflecting the structure of a basketball game. I have a few insights about elements on which the team focused in order to draw us through time, and I'd like to share those with you at this point. So first, I'd like to mention our scenic designer, Mike Lawler. Mike returns to Ford after designing Life Sucks in 2019. His other previous credits here include Learning to Stay and Silent Sky. He is a staple in town with a long history both at CTM and at Theater Lila, among others. Mike's task was to create our playground. The play is not only split into 4 different years, but it's also split evenly into 2 locations, both of which alter over the course of that time. So his focus, his task, was equally split: how to balance the aesthetic with the practical, or specifically, how to make a scene change as quickly and efficiently as possible. One solution was to reuse pieces that you'll see on the stage. You'll also see a wall unit shift on a central axis. On a broader level, with design reflecting really in a fractal sense the world of the play, the scenic looks give us both a sense of exterior and interior. We end up spending most of our time, or all of our time really, in the more intimate interior space, and watch over the course of time change and excavation both there and in the relationship of the 2 characters on stage, their own awareness of each other and their own self-awareness. They're doing some excavating of their own. To lighting design, Colin Goronsky is our lighting designer. Colin returns to Ford for a second production after last year's Garbologists. They are a Milwaukee-based lighting designer and technician and work frequently not only with theater companies but also with dance. Colin, I've gotten to see their work over the long course of time, and they really have an eye for color and a subtle sense of change. In playing with the configuration of King James locations and those 4 quarters, I'd like to ask you to look for work not only inspired by the practical, which might have something to do with time of day or season, but also how the interior life is amplified. Our costume designer, Karen Brown-Lattimore. Karen's collaborations with Ford include designs for The Wanderers, also with Michael Burke, and The Garbologists. And her work will have been seen in all major Wisconsin theater hubs, from Madison to Door County to Milwaukee by the end of 2024. So she is quite prolific. On the first day of rehearsal, she told the team assembled to pay special mind to shoes in this production. I'll ask you to do the same. This detail in the costumes, almost more than any other element in the play, apart from the evolution of a specific prop I will mention soon, is what helps us track time and age through the characters, along with their, at least through how they appear, along with their sense of style and with their economic status. Karen went on a hunt to find shoes which could land us in each of the years we get to see in the play, specifically 2004, 2010, 2014, and 2016. Both of the characters we get to see between the ages of 21 to 33. So while the actors will be crafting those characters and their relationship and their aging over the course of time, it's Karen's job to show us how we move forward through how they look to us. I'd like to turn our attention now to our composer and sound designer, Brian Grimm. Brian Grimm, at this point, is a real Ford veteran as well. You may have noticed a hallmark of his composition and sound work in The Wanderers and the Garbologists. So the capture of ambient sound, clips, bites that he weaves into the undercurrent of a scene or into a transition with atmospheric musicality. Also, if you saw the Flying Lovers of Vitebsk earlier this year, you would have seen him on stage as one of our musicians in the production. For King James, Brian really hoped to bring the hype and energy, as he says, of what happens at a sports event, while at the same time setting the time period. So, how to do both of those things at the same time. Conceptually, he began with important songs from the year reflected in the upcoming quarter, so in transitions between these quarters. Theme songs for the team or that one might associate with LeBron James, or recorded sound highlight reels for that specific year and maybe some of the games that occurred at that point. So as quarters change over, listen closely as the scenes transition to hear his final choices. Finally, I'd like to point to our props master, Kaya Sarajian. Kaya is making her debut with Forward. As an emerging Wisconsin theater professional, Kaya graduated from UW and in December 2023 and has already worked locally here with Children's Theater of Madison and Broome Street. Please make sure to check out the season tickets that she created for our actors to drool over. Yes, it was very important during tech to see how they looked under the lights, and they're gorgeous. That's my own personal joy. But in keeping with the others that I've brought up, her task, as you'll see, was to flesh out and fill a few locations in part. But she too had the task of dropping us into the aughts and the teens through one specific element that showed up deliberately in every scene: cell phones. From early texting tools to listening accessories that show up later, this prop will no doubt take many of us back to our own earlier devices and trade-ins and learning curves on this particular technology. Of note, as I begin to wrap up here, an important introduction, I think, to other production team members. Our stage manager for this production, Abby Hess, is taking the helm in the booth after having worked on many Forward productions as our assistant stage manager. The magic you've seen Abby make in the past has been visible from the house as a master of changeovers, among other things, from scenic transitions to props. So she was the mastermind behind organizing the sandwich supplies in Clyde's last year, and really truly was our own garbage collector in the Garbologists. This is Abby's 5th season with Forward, and we're excited to have her in the booth for this production. Dev Winch, our ASM, is making their Forward debut. A graduate of Marquette University. They worked in this area at APT and on the Milwaukee side of the highway at Milwaukee Chamber Theater, among other places. Adam Hastings, our new technical director this year, is the owner of Spotlight Construction Company. Adam's young business is designed to construct sets specifically for the stage, and his clients range from Forward to Fireside to Next Act in Milwaukee. He and his team are also taking on some corporate construction. About now, our artists on the stage. Of note is that those working on this play haven't worked together as a team before, though they are all veterans of Forward. Director Michael Burke worked with Greg Pragal on The Wanderers, and that's it. So key to the first few weeks of rehearsal, in Michael's view, was building relationship between the two actors playing Matt and Sean in order to build the intimacy that we really need to see authentically in their relationship. The first time they met was on a Zoom callback for the production. The first time they met in person was first rehearsal. And here they are. Marcus Causey has been seen on the Forward stage in Exit Strategy and The Flick. Based in Milwaukee, he's had a long career there at companies such as Renaissance Theater Works, Next Act Theater, First Stage, and Milwaukee Chamber Theater. Greg Pragal returns to Ford after 2023's The Wanderers. Based in the Green Bay area, he's also no stranger to the Wisconsin stage. If you've been up to Door County, you may have seen him in last season's Boeing at Third Avenue Playworks. They may play fans in this production, but here at Forward, we're fans of both of them. Break a leg, you guys. And that brings me to conclude. As I wrap up and prepare to send you into the Playhouse, a few more items of note. Take a look when you're there at the lobby display just outside the doors to the Playhouse for a timeline of King James' storied career. If you miss it, don't worry. You can always study up in your playbill. We've also reproduced it there. Some fun local trivia. Did you know there's a King James Way in Fitchburg? Has anybody been there? Let us know. I might just drive by sometime. And then finally, up next, our own world premiere, Heidi Armbruster's Murder Girl. We hope you can join us again then. But till we meet, enjoy King James. Take care, everybody. All the best.